This NBA Tuesday Player Props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign our promo code MACHINE to get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and the NFL with Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
And taking a shot to ground downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley. Wilson, what as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, the first official NBA Propcast for the 2024 season. I did mention that we would eventually get these pods rolling out and episodes rolling out for the NBA, at least for the Propcast. And here we are with our first one for November 26th. Cup games here happening in the association here tonight. I think there's 5 games on the schedule. We'll give you, of course, our player props, 3 each for myself and my co-host here, of course. And we'll get into some honorable mentions. I'll put together an Underdog Fantasy entry here as well for the game. So I think it works very well with Propcast here for the NBA and the Underdog Fantasy entry. So we'll get to that. And, of course, we'll wrap it up with best bets as well. But joining me, of course, here to help me break everything down for the player props on the hardwood, I got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
Man, I'm excited. I always say I'm excited, but I'm super excited as we finally have our first podcast for the NBA. Get to talk all things NBA, and give out some player props here. We haven't been around these parts in a while, man. So it feels good to be back. It's almost like a kid at Christmas over here. I'm excited, man.
Yeah, it's been a while. I know we were doing real well last season with the NBA Propcast. So, I mentioned that we were going to eventually fire it up, and here we are. So we'll try to go at least 2 times a week for the NBA season Propcast before the NFL season does wrap up, and then we'll ramp it up a little bit more probably after the new year. But at least at minimum through December, we'll try to go at least twice a week for the NBA Propcast. And of course, we're continue being or doing the NFL Propcast as well. So again, great time to be subscribed here for the Propcast. We'll also do these shows live on the NBA Gambling Podcast YouTube channel. So whether you're watching on the Propcast or whether you're watching over there, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and hit the like button on the stream here as well. Chris, I know we haven't really gotten to talk a lot about NBA, of course, because, or at least from a player perspective, because, of course, this is our first one here. But a lot of injuries that have transpired against the superstar players across the league. We do have a couple guys coming back or did come back at the beginning of this week and tonight as well. We saw John Morant return for the Memphis Grizzlies. We get Kevin Durant back tonight. We get Bradley Beal back tonight for the Phoenix Suns. Joel Embiid, Paul George situation stays a little bit fluid. That team is a catastrophe right now, so I don't really want to. I'm tired of talking about them, so I don't really want to talk about the Sixers right now. But all we always want is just the guys stay healthy. Of course, it's really, really tricky when it does come to the NBA season, guys being in and out of the lineups and things like that. But I guess generally, Chris, throughout the NBA season here, anything that's kind of caught your eye, maybe a player performance, maybe a guy you've been keeping your eye on, anything like that that's kind of caught your eye at the early part of the season here?
You know what? It's kind of going back and forth a little bit. If I'm starting from a team perspective, I think OKC got super hot out the gate, right? We saw this team man, it's like they, the defensive numbers that they were putting up, even without, actually when they had Chet, was absolutely insane. I don't think that was sustainable. Giving up 68 points per 100 possessions in the half court was absolutely not sustainable. But they were off to a super high start. Same thing for Golden State. Even though they lost back-to-back games now, I think they failed to cover their last 3 spreads. From a player perspective, if I think I'd be remiss without mentioning LaMelo. Boy, this dude has been on fire, But every time I think about, wanting to fade the Hornets, I'm like, do I really want to bet against LaMelo? I don't know if you got a chance to see the the 1 foot shot that he shot where he faked to the rim and then jumped back out. These numbers are crazy, and they just keep getting more and more depleted. They lost Grant Williams. Hopefully he gets better soon, but he's done for the season. Don't have a true center. Got Taj Gibson, pulled him out the closet. I've asked him if he could come in there and play a couple minutes for him. It's like that old varsity jacket that you got from high school when you bring Taj Gibson in the game. But 44 points last night, 50 the night before, a couple nights ago against the Milwaukee Bucks, 35 against Detroit. This dude has been crushing him. I'm averaging 31.8 points per game right now, and he's not even that inefficient. He's shooting 44% from the field. I know he wants to get his 3-point percentage up, only shooting 35%. But what LaMelo's doing for Charlotte right now, I know they haven't been winning games, but it's been really, really fun to watch. He's been absolutely crushing it. Outside of LaMelo, Jokic is still doing Jokic things, right? We know he took a couple of days off because his wife had a baby, but he's still doing, some really good things. Wemby actually averaging 3.5 blocks is pretty insane to me as well. And I'd also be remiss without mentioning Dyson Daniels from a player prop perspective. This dude's steals are something that you just ladder every night. You can go to sleep, wake up, and you have some cash in your account the next morning. So those guys, I'll mention one more. Anthony Edwards. Yeah. I think me and you might have talked about this off air before the season started, but I think I might have mentioned this to you. I said, Anthony Edwards is shooting more threes than anybody else in the preseason. I know this is not going to continue, but this is pretty insane. It has continued. This dude is leading the league in three-pointers made right now, and a tenth of a three, less than 5 per game. So he's getting to his spot and just kind of pulling up in your face, coming down in transition. I know your Houston Rockets gonna have their hands full tonight with him, but 5 threes a game is absolutely insane. Whenever you're ahead of Steph Curry, it's absolutely insane. So those are I'll save some for you because I know some others. But what about yourself? What any players or teams kind of stick out to you? Caught your eye?
Yeah, you mentioned the players there. Jokic was one of the ones that was on my list here as well. Look, he's a former MVP. He's one of the best players in the world. I think some people have him as the best player in the world for a reason. And again, for the past 3, 4, 5 years, the numbers for the Denver Nuggets when he's on the floor versus when he's off the floor is just a drastic drop off. And again, you could just put him as the MVP every single season, and I don't think a lot of people would have an issue with it just because of what he's able to do for that Denver Nuggets team. So I won't waste any more time on Jokic because he's going to continue doing the things that he's been doing for this Denver Nuggets team. I think one player, Chris, that I'll briefly mention here because I do also want to talk about it later in the episode here, has been how efficient Zach LaVine has been this season shooting the basketball for the Chicago Bulls, because we're at times used to him seeing jacking up 25 shots a game, shooting at 40%, but he's been very, very efficient in shooting at a high level for the Chicago Bulls team. Is it to boost his his trade value, I should say? Possibly. Because his name has been in the rumors. I feel like nobody wants to take on the contract right now, but the way he's been playing, at least individually for the Chicago Bulls, I think that's something that we should positively mention about Zach LaVine, just because, it's always surrounding, at least negativity for a guy like Zach LaVine. You mentioned LaMelo Ball. Again, not going to regurgitate everything there.
Box office.
It really is. Honestly, it really is. And he's right now second in the league in points per game at 31 a game, right behind Giannis at 32.4. I'll mention one more player who I think a lot of people were down on, but has been a great addition to the New York Knicks, Karl-Anthony Towns. The way that he's been playing basketball there for the Knicks, rebounding the basketball well, shooting it efficiently from the 3-point line. He's averaging 26.3 points per game. 55% from the floor, 47.1% from beyond the arc. I think that takes a lot of pressure off a guy like Jalen Brunson to have to go out there, be the guy every single night. And not that Jalen Brunson's having a bad season. He himself is averaging 25 points per game as well for that New York Knicks team. I think for them, the focus really has to go down to the defensive side, which I think has been the biggest surprise for me, that their defense has not been playing very well thus far this season, especially when you have guys that can guard, the perimeter, and OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges there as well. So I think it'll get better as the season progresses here, as they have 16 games under the belt right now. So he's at the top here. Chris, those were the guys I was looking at as far as, individual performances. One more quickly throw out there. Cade, prior to the injury, was playing really well, filling up the stat sheet. I mean, he was walking into double-doubles, getting the triple-doubles there as well for the Detroit Pistons. Fortunately for them, they pulled out the victory last night and a buzzer beater by Jaden Ivey. So hopefully Cade can come back sooner rather than later for the Detroit Pistons. All right, Chris, before we get into our player props here for the Tuesday night schedule, in honor of Thanksgiving, we're running a massive merch sale Thursday through Sunday this week. Everything is 25% off with promo code Black Friday. That's right, 25% off of everything, including hats, hoodies, t-shirts, mugs. You have that degenerate in your life or who's just a SGPN fan, make sure you guys get over there to the SGPN merch store again. Starting this Thursday through Sunday, 25% off. Make sure you use that promo code Black Friday. All right, Chris, let's get into it here. Let's get into our player props here for the Tuesday night card, NBA Cup games. Lead us off where you take us for your first player prop.
All right, so we're actually going to start in the first game here, Munaf. The first game on the board is the Washington Wizards and the Chicago Bulls. And I'm going with something that's been cashing at a very high rate, and that's Nikola Vucevic, up and over his three-point prop. The number is 1.5. It is juice. It's minus 125 or south of minus 125 on most books, but there is a minus 113, which I'm totally happy with laying that much juice. And shout out to our guy Ski Prophet. He talked about this one maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and this was plus 150, 160, right? And it's something that I was kind of paying attention to then, but not really putting my hard-earned money on it. And Vucevic just continued to hit this. If he's actually hit the line 80% of his last 5 games, 70% of his last 10 games. So you love that hit rate. You just look at his recent games. He had 2 against Memphis. He had 2 against Atlanta. He had 2 against Milwaukee. He had 6 versus Detroit. And I think he has 2 again tonight. You look at the Washington Wizards defensively, they're poor defensively from an efficiency perspective. They're top, bottom 5 defensive rated team. They give up a ton of three-point makes. Their three-point defense is bottom 10 as well. And they're allowing teams to, hit from 3. I think his ability to be able to stretch the floor is something that teams still just haven't really bought into yet. The other thing you love in this spot is that this game is going to be played with pace. We know Chicago plays at a top 5 pace in the NBA. They also make, I think, the 3rd in passes per game. So it's a bunch of passes. The ball's kind of popping. Everybody kind of getting their shares. And I think Nikola Vucevic gets his share of 3-point attempts in this one. He goes up and over the 1.5 makes, So that's how we're going to start it off today.
Yeah, couldn't talk you off that. He's been really, really good as well for the Chicago Bulls. More importantly, shooting the basketball there for that team. So, this is going to be obviously the game with the highest total on the board. Anytime you see the Chicago Bulls involved, you're going to see these high totals just because, number one, like Chris mentioned, they play at a very high pace. And defensively, they've been one of the worst in the entire NBA thus far this season. So I also had a player prop in this game. I'm going to the other side. You mentioned how bad the Chicago Wizards defense has been. Bulls defense has been just as bad. And they've been really, really bad against a point guard position, giving up the assist. And this is something that I've been very, very profitable on this season. It's just taking opposing point guards to go up and over their assist number. So I'm looking at Jordan Poole in this matchup to go over 5.5 assists in this game for the Washington Wizards. And on the season, the Chicago Bulls to that point guard position are giving up, let's see here, 10.8 assists per game, which is the most in the entire NBA. They're also allowing the most assists as a team to the opposition in the entire NBA. And the number 5.5 right now for Jordan Poole. Typically when I've seen some other point guards, Trae Young has been fantastic against the Chicago Bulls. I think he's had like 5 straight games of 13 plus assists against the Bulls. But you also take a look at the numbers for Jordan Poole on the season, right? So this season, 21.2 points per game. He's averaging 4.9 assists. And I know that's a little bit lower than the projection right now, but you take a look at what he's done over the last 5 games. 8 assists against the Celtics. He had 5 and 5 against the Knicks and the Detroit Pistons. 6 against the Atlanta Hawks and 6 against the San Antonio Spurs. So we're expecting this game to be a up and down game, a lot of possessions, a lot of shot opportunities. So I think that assists can really rack up here for a guy like Jordan Poole. I think this is a very buy low situation for Poole. I know he's going to be playing the minutes. And again, a lot of pace, like we mentioned, is expected to be in this game. So I'll start there. Jordan Poole over 5.5 assists against the Chicago Bulls here, Chris.
I mean, you're not going to get me to talk you off, not with the pace and not with the numbers that you just laid out. I think it's an excellent play. I know he was listed as questionable. Did you see any update on his status for today? I know he missed that last game as well. Who were they playing in that last game? The Wizards just came off a game against the Indiana Pacers on Sunday. I know he missed that one, but if he plays, I think I know this number has actually come down because I think his assists were listed at 6.5 earlier this season as well. So you're getting a buy low spot, potentially maybe because of the injury. But yeah, I like it. I like it also because Brogdon is probably back as well.
Yeah,
you're getting a discount. So yeah, I could not talk you off. Like you mentioned, the Bulls. I think I was looking at my notes this morning. I was reading something this morning. Said the Bulls have given up 140 points 3 times already this season.
Yep,
they haven't even played 20 games yet. So
as well, yeah, that defense is just.
This will be there.
Yeah. And I think it's, when we go back to last year, I know Lonzo Ball wasn't there for majority of the season last year and is already missing time right now, but they also had Alex Caruso last year as well. So that was a pretty good defensive backcourt. But when you lose those two type of defensive players, your defense is really going to be a setback for this Chicago Bulls team. So hopefully that continues here tonight against the Washington Wizards. All right, Chris, before we do get into our next player props here, let me just quickly remind everybody about our good old friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus for all sports: NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NBA, NASCAR, and more. And you can now use specials and boosts on all flex entries. Now make sure you use that promo code MACHINE to get a first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Again, that's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use our promo code MACHINE. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here. Take us over to your next player prop for this Tuesday night schedule. Where you got?
We are going to one of the later games, and I'm backing one of my guys. I actually like Anthony Davis a lot tonight. I think he has a very good matchup. I'm taking his points prop up and over. This is 27.5 if you want the juice, 28.5 if you don't want the juice. I like Anthony Davis tonight. Neither here nor there. He's played. First of all, let's start with this. He's averaging 29.9, so right at 30. Averaging 30.1 over the course of the full season. Over the course of the month of November, he's right at 29.9. So he's been consistently hitting this number. I think 60% of his games so far. So strong consideration for him right here. He's averaging 32 points, including a 39-point performance against the Suns so far this season. A 35-point performance against the Suns. So this will be the third time that the Lakers have played against the Suns. He had 29 in the most recent game, 35 in the game before. We know that this is a team that gives it up. They allow the fourth most points to centers, which bodes well for Anthony Davis. I don't think that they have a true matchup for him with Nurkic being out there. I know that they are probably in need of a win in the worst way, but so are the Lakers after losing back-to-back games against the Orlando Magic and the Denver Nuggets the other day. So, I like all of those different angles. It's a cup game, so maybe some fouling goes on late. Anthony Davis' minutes have been consistent. He's averaging 35 plus minutes per game, and I think that just looking at his field goal attempts over the last few games, if it feels like with the Lakers losing, they got to get back to giving him the ball a lot more. He only shot the ball 19 times in the last game against Denver. He only shot the ball 22 times in the game before. But if you go back and look at, the beginning of the season, he was shooting the ball a lot more. The field goal percentage is always above, it's 50% or better in typically every single spot. And I'm just expecting him to give, his team fits. That's how the Lakers typically beat the Phoenix Suns, is when he has very strong games. He shot 11 for 18 on the 25th, which was the second game of the season. Cleared his number with 35, like I mentioned. And then in the follow-up game, he had 29, even though the Lakers lost, and that was a lower scoring game. So I just think we play inside out. I think everything goes through Anthony Davis today to try to get back on winning track here, So we'll go Anthony Davis up and over 27.5 or 28.5, depending on how you want to play it.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned, right, that we see that transition from the focal point of the Lakers offense being LeBron to the primary scorer and the number one option being Anthony Davis. And we saw earlier part of the season where LeBron was just walking into triple doubles, that he's being more that guy that's going to rebound the basketball, facilitate, get the guys involved, find the shooters in the right spots, and get Anthony Davis the ball there as well. And we know what type of player Anthony Davis is. He can score at all three levels, inside the paint, the mid range. He can knock down 3-point shots. He gets to the free throw line as well. And so those are the type of players that you really want to back when you're looking at points props here. So, Lakers coming up, like you mentioned, the 2 straight losses. Want to get back on the winning ways. And again, they take these cup games very seriously. I think they are, I want to say
undefeated.
Undefeated, right?
9-0.
ATS
9-0.
well?
They haven't lost one at all. They didn't cover against the Jazz. That was the only game that they haven't covered since cup play started, going all the way back to last season. So yeah 9-0 straight up, 8-1 against the number are the Lakers in cup play.
Yeah. So I mean, they've talked about it, that they take it seriously, especially for the younger guys there as well. So couldn't talk you off of this one here for Anthony Davis. All right, Chris. For my next player prop, you had mentioned the gentleman earlier when we were just talking in general about teams and players this season, and I'm looking at Mr. Victor Wembanyama to go up and over his blocks. Hey, look, a defensive prop here on the first Propcast of this season here, Chris. But the number's at 3.5 for Wemby. And I don't know if it's just a matchup thing that he has against the Utah Jazz, or his wingspan, his length, his defensive abilities just really bother the Utah Jazz. But Chris, he's played 5 career games against the Utah Jazz. He's recorded at least 5 blocks in every single one of those games. 5. So 4 games he had exactly 5. And the game earlier this season, he had 7 blocks against the Utah Jazz there. So I think that continues here tonight. Walker Kessler, I know, has been in and out of the lineup there, missing some time there for the Utah Jazz there. But I mean, we know Wemby, he just, the wingspan, the ability to give him that rim protection for the San Antonio Spurs has just been there for him. So I like his blocks to go up and over. I played it in that matchup earlier this season against the Utah Jazz. I know he missed that second game against the Jazz, but I do expect him to be out there in this game here. And just continue blocking shots, being a defensive presence for the San Antonio Spurs team. So I like his blocks to go up and over the number of 3.5 here for tonight, Chris.
Yeah, he's been having really good games for whatever reason, against the Jazz. I remember tweeting it out during the first time that they played in Utah without Lauri Markkanen, when Lauri Markkanen wasn't playing. And he looked like he was playing the game as if somebody was playing 2K with him, because he was just shooting a bunch of 3-pointers, blocking a bunch of shots, running up and down the floor, pulling up from 3. It's really interesting to see somebody pull up from 3 that's like 10 feet tall. Because there's nothing that you can do about it. But he's, they're playing some of the best defense that they've played so far, in all seriousness. 3 straight wins for the San Antonio Spurs team, and they've been against really good opponents. I know they beat this Jazz team at home in that 3-game homestand, but they also knocked off the Thunder. They also knocked out the Golden State Warriors. So, yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see him, altering a couple shots and then blocking a couple shots as well. I like this look on Wemby up and over his 3.5 blocks.
Yeah, averaging 5.4 blocks in those 5 games, like I mentioned, against the against the Utah Jazz. So hopefully that does continue here tonight for Victor Wembanyama. All right, Chris, take us over to your third player prop here. What do you got?
All right, so third player prop, we're actually going to go to – I don't know if I'm going to get there because I'm not sure if he's going to play. I'll say that for honorable mention. But I want to play on your guy here, I want to go to this Rockets game, and I'm looking at Alfred Sengun. I think Sengun can have a really good matchup against Rudy Gobert. I like his points prop. You can get, I think 17.5 is super juice, so you can get an 18.5. I do expect this game to go under, but I am also of the mindset that Alfred Sengun is going to have to do a lot for you guys, So first off, we got Jalen Green on the injury report. He's dealing with an illness. He's been dealing with an illness for the last few games. Is Fred VanVleet suspended?
I haven't seen it. I know he got fined, but I don't think he got a suspension or anything. He got fined $50,000. I don't think
that's what I thought. Okay, I just want to make sure. I feel like I was reading something that said he did get suspended, but I didn't see that he was suspended at all. But we just look at Alfred Sengun. He's averaging 21 points over the last 5 games. He's hit this over 17.5, 18.5, and 60% of those games, and he's right about there. I'm just of the mindset, that the Minnesota Timberwolves have better wing defenders, right? Yeah. Like you guys, the Timber, I think they're going to make it hard for Fred VanVleet, make it hard for Jalen Green when they're, being guarded by McDaniels and some of these Nickeil Alexander-Walker, some of these guys off the bench. So I could see them having, them struggling in this spot and the ball really going to Alfred Sengun. I think if Rudy Gobert gets in foul trouble, which has the potential of happening, Sengun eats in this spot. I think he has a major advantage here. The Timberwolves are like one of the better defensive teams in the NBA, but their front line outside of Rudy Gobert doesn't really scare me. When I was looking into the advanced numbers earlier, I'm seeing a Minnesota team that's giving up, not protecting the rim well, and we know Sengun likes to eat down there. The Timberwolves on the full season, they're actually bottom 10 in opponent rim accuracy, allowing teams to shoot about 68% at the rim, 43% in at the paint. But then when I look at the last 5 games, this is what really stood out to me. They're actually the worst team in the NBA at opponent rim frequency. At opponent rim accuracy. So teams are shooting 81% at the rim. Guess who likes to shoot a lot of shots at the rim? Alfred Sengun. And guess who's also taking the second most amount of shots at the rim? Your Houston Rockets. Almost 40% of their shots are coming at the rim, So I do like the full game under, but I think Sengun's going to have to contribute a lot in this spot. It's also a cup game, so we could see, some point separation. So I'm going to go with your guy, Alfred Sengun, up and over his 17.5 or 18.5, however you want to play it, up and over his points prop here.
Yeah, Sengun, we know that the question for this Rockets team over the last couple seasons was who's going to be the focal point of this offense, and was it going to be Jalen Green? Was it going to be Sengun? And I think it has to be Sengun, because I think Jalen Green's just very, very inconsistent. So number one, we're not even sure if he's going to play in this game here tonight for the Houston Rockets, which means I think that just creates more opportunities, I should say, not pressure, but opportunities for Sengun to score the basketball for the Houston Rockets. And you laid out the defensive numbers there beautifully and the rim frequency for the Houston Rockets in this game. So he's gone up and over this number of 17.5. For the last 5 games for the Houston Rockets. And I think that, this, even though I think we both think that it's going to be more of a game that's going to be defensive, I still think that Sengun can eat in this game against the against the Minnesota Timberwolves here. So they've been off since Saturday. They've had a couple of days off here. So that's big for the Rockets, and also Sengun there as well. I know the shot attempts are going to be them for him as well. So yeah, I couldn't talk you off of Sengun here, up and over his 17.5 points here against the Minnesota Timberwolves. All right. For my next player prop, I should have just mentioned this when you talked about Vucevic, but I like Vucevic rebounds here tonight, Chris. Over 11.5 is a number. And number one, you take a look at this Washington Wizards team, right? Don't really have that true presence, at least in the starting lineup, when it comes to rebounding the basketball. I know they have Valanciunas that's been coming off of the bench for them, and whatever the case might be. But let's just start with Vucevic here. In his career, 39 games against the Washington Wizards, averaging 15.6 points per game, 10.2 rebounds. All right, well, let's go recently with Vucevic against the Washington Wizards. The last 5 games, he's recorded double-digit rebounds, and in 3 straight games, he's recorded at least 13 rebounds against this Washington Wizards team. And we take a look at what the Wizards are giving up this season to that center position. And they are allowing, number one, 24.4 points per game, but they're also allowing the second most rebounds to that center position this season. So, in a game like we talked about that we think, we know it's going to be fast paced. Defense is going to be optional. You're going to be getting a lot of shots up. That just creates more opportunities for rebounds in this matchup here. So I think it's not Sengun, but Nikola Vucevic has a big rebounding night here. I'll take the over 11.5 on his rebounds here, Chris. You can still get that at plus odds right now for him up in this game here. So up and over 11.5 rebounds for Nikola Vucevic here tonight.
Yeah, Vooch is in a really good matchup, especially when you think about the Wizards offensively. If I don't know if you've looked at those numbers, but boy, I know the Bulls defense is not great. Don't let me fool you. But you look at, I was just looking at Washington offensive numbers earlier, trying to figure out how I wanted to play this total today. I think I'm gonna stay on the sideline because the Wizards, to your point, with him just the rebounding opportunities being there, the Wizards are actually the second worst offense in the NBA, scoring 105.8 points per 100 possessions. They're also the fifth worst offensive rebounding team. So they're not getting a lot of offensive rebounds. But guess what they are doing? They're giving up some offensive rebounds. They're actually giving up the fifth most offensive rebounds. So I think a lot of things, especially with the pace, presents a lot of opportunities for rebounds in this matchup. I think it's a really great look by you.
All right, so that's 3 player props each from myself and Chris. Before we continue the conversation here, let me tell everyone about our good old friends over at mybookie.ag. Look, we're brought to you by mybookie.ag, and mybookie has been running on SGPN for years. Check out their new and improved website, great on mobile, plus props for every game and the live dealer casino. They even have an early cash out option over on mybookie.ag. So head over to mybookie.ag, but make sure you guys use our promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Yeah, that's right. So if you deposit $1,000, they're going to give you $1,000 as a deposit match over at mybookie.ag. Plus, they'll also give you a $10 casino chip. You can turn that $10 into maybe, who knows, $100. Have some more money there to play with over on mybookie.ag. Again, that's mybookie.ag. Make sure you use that promo code SGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's Prep Partner Rhythm is a #1 AI-powered back sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing models from the leaderboard, or have Rhythm build a model for you. And now you can track props in the Rhythm app as well. NFL picks, NFL props, college football, college basketball, and NBA. Rhythm has it all. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, Chris, let's get into honorable mentions here for the NBA card. Anything you're looking at that's on your short list there, but trying to get to the window with?
Yeah, I want your thoughts on a couple. First, let's go right back to the game that you talked about. I was looking at, I know Vucevic rebounds 11.5 is a really good look. Looking at Alex Sarr, I feel like it's kind of sneaky. His rebounds prop is 7.5. I know it's a pretty high number, but it's plus money. And that's what attracted me. I see a plus 114 out there in the market. Sarr is not the greatest rebounder, but he's a very tall guy. And recently, maybe it's just, something that happened. I know that the Wizards, for what it's worth, they had I wouldn't say a players only meeting, but they had some kind of meeting where, they said that, I know we're going to be bad this year. We can't be this bad, pretty much. and after they had that meeting, they end up covering against Boston. And they covered against the Pacers as well, or they got a push, depending on where you got the number. 2 back-to-back unders for the Wizards. And I do think that correlates with Sarr's rebounds as of late. If he's actually put together back-to-back games where he's had 9 rebounds and 14 rebounds. And those 2 games came against Boston and Indiana. 18 rebound chances and 22 rebound chances in his last 2 games. 28 minutes and 31 minutes in those games. So I do think he'll be needed to slow down, Vucevic today if they're going to. And then when I look at the Bulls on the opposite side, if you can always attack rebounds against them, they give up the 4th most defensive, the most defensive rebounds in the NBA overall in general. So I kind of want to get there with Sarr, but he's on the short list. I want to see it a little bit more. The other guy that really stood out to me today was, and I'm not sure if he's going to play, he's also listed as questionable, Mike Conley. I want to take his assists. The number's super low. Your Houston Rockets play fast, so it's kind of scary. But 4.5 is the number. That's also plus money over on Bet365. You got a couple different things working against him. First thing is it'll be his first game back. He's been missing some time. I think it's a toe injury, I want to say. I know he missed that whole road trip. They went to Toronto, they lost. They went to Boston, they lost. I think he missed the game before that as well. And he's averaging right at 5 on the season. But when I look at your Houston Rockets, y'all defense has been absolutely amazing. Like, it's been really good. One of the best in the NBA. I think 3rd best defensive rated team over the full season. And that correlates with other opponents not being able to get assists. The Houston Rockets actually give up the fewest assists in the NBA right now. So those were the 2 that really stood out to me. Looking at Sarr rebounds, taking Mike Conley under his 4.5 assists. Didn't pull the trigger on either. And then last one I'll go just very quickly is Bam. Kind of wanted to play Bam. I think he has a really good matchup against Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis today. He's over in 4 of his last 5 games, 5 of his last 7. He's attempted 11 or more shots in the last 6 of his 7 games. And outside of 11, I think the next number was like 13, and he had a couple games where he had 20 attempts in there as well. The problem is when he saw Milwaukee last season, he had a 16-point game, so he finished 2 points short, but that was in Milwaukee. When they played at home, he actually had a 31-point game. The problem, if it's with Jimmy Butler back on the floor, having, 30-point game the other day against the Dallas Mavericks, is that I'm not sure how much Bam did go over. He finished with 19, but so he's right at this number. So it kind of, I don't know. With Jimmy in, I think he's only over in 3 of the last 10. So they have been relying on him a little bit more. So I kind of stayed off of that one, but those were the 3. Bam up and over 17.5, Mike Conley under his 4.5 assists, and then Alex Sarr over his 7.5 rebounds. I wanted your thoughts on those 3.
So I'll start with Bam. 5 straight games at home against Milwaukee. He's had 20 plus points, but again, we have to check if Jimmy was playing in those games. He's also had a double-double in 5 straight home games for the Miami Heat against the Milwaukee Bucks. He's actually been rebounding it pretty well against the Milwaukee Bucks there as well. So, again, if it's at 17.5, I think that may be a good number. We could see what his rebounds are at as well in this matchup here for Bam. I guess would probably be a 9.5, or it's at 10.5. So, yeah, I mean, I couldn't talk you off of the points there. The only concern would be, like you mentioned, Jimmy Butler has just come out looking really, really good for this Miami Heat team since he returned from injury. The one you mentioned about Alex Sarr, I think what you mentioned about number one, his slight minute increase, and also the rebounding opportunities you mentioned in those 2 games. I think that's huge for them, for him at least. And again, in a game like we talked about extensively, that we expect a lot of points, a lot of shots, a lot of pace of getting up, those opportunities are just going to increase for rebounding there. So I think that's maybe something to keep an eye on here. If it's at plus money, Chris, I mean, I wouldn't be able to talk you off getting it at plus money here for Alex Sarr. And the last one you mentioned was Mike Conley. I really do like taking unders for guys that are coming off of an injury that missed maybe at least my minimum number for NBA is around 4 to 5 games, just because you're trying to get your win back under it, or under you, I should say. And defensively is what the key is for the Rockets team, is that they've been really good on the perimeter against these guys that they faced. If it is Fred VanVleet matched up on him, I think that he can give him a hard time. You can stay in front of him, getting hands in the passing lanes, creating those turnovers. And primarily, I think that Anthony Edwards is a guy that really has the ball in his hands a lot for this, Timberwolves team. So I think that more than likely you'll see some type of minutes limitation on Mike Conley here tonight if he does go for this Minnesota Timberwolves team. So, that's where I'm at with those 3 that you mentioned there for tonight. I'll throw 2 more at you here, Chris. I'm going to go back to Wemby up and over his 3-pointers. It's at 3.5. It's at plus money. Utah is one of the worst 3-point defenses in the entire NBA. And I think that you take a look at what Wemby has done, not only over his past several games, but in fact also against the Utah Jazz in particular, he's been able to knock down those 3-point shots. And just looking at his last 5 games, he's made at least 4 3-pointers in 5 straight. I'll go back even further. So last 5 games, he's made 6, 6, 8, 4, and 4 overall. And then in the last 2 games in particular against the Utah Jazz, who, like I mentioned, have a very bad 3-point defense, he's knocked down in the matchup earlier this season. He knocked down 6 on 9 attempts, and then he had 4 for 13 last season against this Utah Jazz team. So that was when I was looking at Wemby over 3.5 3-pointers made. And then Zach LaVine, Chris, on his points prop. I'm not sure if this is a trap or whatever, but the number's at 23.5. And I know on the season he's averaging 22.7. But you take a look at the last 4 games, he's gone up and over this number of 23.5, 25 against the Pistons, 27 against the Bucks, 26 against the Hawks, and 29 in the last game against the Memphis Grizzlies. And again, we've been talking about that if we expect points to be scored in this game, that obviously somebody's going to have to score them. And we like Vucevic tonight, but also Zach LaVine. I know he's going to get up his shot attempts as well. He's been shooting the 3-ball very well for this Bulls team as well. So I was looking at those 2, Zach LaVine up and over his number of 23.5 points, and then Victor Wembanyama over 3.5 3-pointers made as well.
I'm not sure what it is about Victor Wembanyama when he sees the Utah jersey, but he turns into Ray Allen. He just wants to let him fly. And like I told you, I remember watching that first one, and I had to tweet about it. It was so like, just like I didn't see it coming. He just like 3 after 3, walk up 3, like pull up 3, swing it, like step back 3. I'm just like, oh wow, okay, Victor. So yeah, no way I could talk you up Victor going up and over his 3-point prop. I mean, they're probably gonna have Walker Kessler on him. Walker Kessler does not want to be pulled that far away from the rim at all. So I love that one. You talked about Zach LaVine points. You know, I think the 3-point is probably good. I'm not sure. I think -140 over on Bet. ESPN Bet might be the best number, but I saw his 3-pointers listed at 2.5. He's actually gone up and over that number 80% of his last 5 games, 60% of his last 10. He's projected to hit about 3. The Wizards give up 123 points per game, which is the second most in the NBA. And we talked about their perimeter defense being weak. So I could not talk you off of that at all. Zach LaVine, like you said, he's playing not just for a trade, but he's also playing for a contract. Zach LaVine wants another one of those big contracts. So, yeah, I mean, one thing you can't doubt right now is Chicago offensively. Defensively is a totally different category, but they are scoring some points, and that's been starting with Zach LaVine specifically, you know.
All right. So those are our honorable mentions here for the Tuesday card. Let's get over to best bets here for tonight, Chris, and then I'll put together a Underdog Fantasy entry here as well. So take us over to your best bet for tonight.
Best bet for tonight, we're going Anthony Davis. Gotta go Anthony Davis. We need a big bounce back spot for Anthony Davis tonight. I mentioned him averaging 30, a little bit over 30 on the full season, him going up and over this number in both games so far. And I think that the Suns may be okay with playing him one-on-one, you know, if they're not sending a double. Dalton Connect's been shooting the 3-point ball really well. D'Angelo Russell shooting 3-point ball pretty well. Austin Reeves actually shooting the 3-point ball pretty well. So I don't think that they're going to double. I think they just let AD get his and, you know, try to limit everybody else tonight. And he's played well, like I said, against them in general. I think we see a lot of field goal attempts for Anthony Davis. They try to play inside out coming off back-to-back losses at the crib. So, yeah, we'll go Anthony Davis up and over his 27.5 points here, you know.
Love it. All right, best bet for Chris, up and over for Anthony Davis, 27.5 points. For my best bet, you know, I'll give out Victor Wembanyama on his blocks to go up and over 3.5. I mean, we mentioned it, right? 5 career games. He's had at least 5 block shots in every single one of those games. Defensively, we know he's going to be a menace. The length, the height, the wingspan, it's all there for Victor Wembanyama to, you know, be a defensive guy. And I think he gets it done again. So I'll take this number as conservative. I know the books won't put out a 4.5 for him, but 3.5 I think is definitely the right number. But again, in this particular matchup against Utah Jazz, he has the numbers there. So I'll take over 3.5 block shots here for Victor Wembanyama as my best bet here for tonight. All right, Chris, let's put together an Underdog Fantasy entry here for tonight. Again, underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code make sure you use that promo code machine to get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. All right, so what I'm going to do to start it here, I'll quickly put in our favorite plays here for tonight, which is going to be Anthony Davis. Will go higher on his point total here. That is at 28.5, but I think that he walks into 30 here tonight for the LA Lakers. I will go to Mr. Victor Wembanyama, see if they have his block shots here available. They do, so we'll go higher, 3.5 blocks, and then we both like Vooch here tonight, Chris. So I'll leave it to you. Do you want to go higher on his rebounds, or do we want to go higher on his 3-pointers made?
Let's go higher on his. It should be a ton of offensive rebounds, a ton of rebounds in general. We go rebounds.
All right, and it's a spicy one. We get a 1.0x on that for Vooch here tonight. All right, so our entry here for tonight: Anthony Davis higher, 28.5 points. Victor Wembanyama higher, 3.5 blocks, and then we'll go Vooch, Nikola Vucevic of the Chicago Bulls higher, 11.5 rebounds. That will get you a return of 5.8 0.83x. So every $10 you put in, you'll get a return of $58.30 courtesy of Underdog Fantasy. So hopefully we do start this NBA Propcast for the season on the winning side of things and cashing a Underdog Fantasy entry here for tonight. But again, if you haven't already joined the conversation and the fun over at Underdog Fantasy, come join us. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. And they also have a 50% profit boost here tonight as well for the NBA. So again, even more opportunities to get a bigger profit here tonight as well. All right. And that will do it for this NBA Propcast on the Propcast, of course, on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Chris, anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think we did a pretty good job for the first one. Let's cash some tickets tonight, man. Put some money in our pockets and in our listeners' pockets as well.
100%, man. Hopefully we do get to the window with our prop bets here for tonight. So it should be a fun night of hoops, NBA Cup games. So yeah, should be a lot of fun. We'll be back tomorrow for the NFL Propcast for the Thanksgiving Day games. So look out for us then. We'll probably go around the same time at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time for the Thanksgiving Day NFL Propcast prop bet. So looking forward to that one as well. All right, make sure you guys follow Chris over on the Twitter machine at ChrisBeCappinn with 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. More importantly, if you haven't already subscribed to the Propcast YouTube channel, please do us a favor going to do so. We're on the march for 1,000 subscribers, currently sitting at 631. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do us a favor and subscribe to the Propcast on YouTube. All right, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow for the NFL Propcast. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and always remember to let it ride.